Hello, welcome to another episode of the F1 Hour. With me, as always, my friend and yours, the goatiest of all F1 minds to have ever goated. How are you doing, good sir?
I'm fine. Grazing in the grass as all good goats should. That's what I
let's
really am. A
let's
serious
let,
animal. And
let's
no. Thank you very much for that nice intro, Cameron. I'm fine. Thank you very much.
Mr. Peter D. Windsor. And if you're not already subscribed to Mr. Peter D. Windsor's channel, I say this genuinely, in earnest, not with tongue in cheek at all. What are you doing with your life? Mr. Peter D. Windsor, as is customary, what do you think was the biggest story to come out of this weekend's Grand Prix?
Well, I think, yeah, obviously the quality of Max's drive and the way he managed the car with the guys on the pit wall and the way they got the best from that car, having started from well below ground zero with the bouncing and everything else. And it's only a P4 car in the sprint. And yet they managed to transform that thing into a race winning car. And Max managed to get the best from it in every respect and was, apart from sector three, was actually quicker than Piastri and Lando Norris in the latter stages of the race, which is very impressive, I think, from where they were. So that's one thing. On the other, I've got to split it down the middle, is the complete and utter nonsense from McLaren. I mean, following the double disqualification of Vegas, now to have a double strategy debacle is unheard of in Formula One history. And of course, the operative and common word there is double. And the reason it's all happening, as predicted, is because they're trying to run two very, very quick racing drivers towards the World Championship with one race to go now. And they're both in with a chance. And as we've been saying all along, that was always going to end in tears, and it was always going to be a problem for them to get the best from the cars and from the best from both drivers if they put those two up against one another. And just to repeat it ad nauseum, if they'd never replaced Daniel Ricciardo and they were running Lando Norris, Daniel Ricciardo, I believe Lando would have won the World Championship by now in a clean and easy fashion. And none of this would be going on. But it's all there because Oscar Piastri is as good as he is. But it's also all there because McLaren didn't need Oscar Piastri. They had Lando Norris and they had Daniel Ricciardo. And so you go away from the flow and the flux of life, and everything comes back to bite you because nothing makes any sense. And there are all these sort of loose connections everywhere that suddenly start buzzing, and you think, oh, what's that all about? Oh, they can't even get a strategy call right now. It's just pathetic to watch.
Mr. Windsor, go on, let me push back constructively then. There isn't the endeavour, the theory of what McLaren are trying to do to be admired at least. Surely as F1 fans we should be rejoicing that they've got these two fire-breathing dragon as far as F1 pedders in Oscar and Lando. And that for once we've got a team that are saying, listen, you guys go at it and have yourselves a race, and all F1 fans rejoice because it's chariots of fire and no rules and regulations, no team orders to be seen.
Well, I don't know. I mean, when it was Max versus Lewis in 21, everybody thought it was wonderful because not only was it Max versus Lewis, but it was also Red Bull versus McLaren, two completely contrasting teams. Now everybody's saying, oh, isn't it great to have racing drivers fighting one another within the same team? I mean, everybody needs to make up their mind what they want in Formula One. I've always said, the closest and most difficult competition is between two quick drivers in the same team if they've got a championship race winning car, from bitter experience at Williams. But that is not usually to the benefit of the team. So it's a question of what you're talking about, and it's a question of what our vision is of the future. All you're saying, everybody's saying, isn't it wonderful to have these two great drivers? Well, I was actually quite sad when Daniel Ricciardo was kicked out of the team, to be honest. I mean, did nobody shed a tear then? I think he was a great, very, very good racing driver, and Formula One still needed him. Funny guy, a lot of personality. So, it's no good saying, oh, well, Oscar's brilliant, he's so quick. You have to remember that the reason he's there is because he replaced Daniel Ricciardo. And Daniel Ricciardo isn't that much slower than Oscar Piastri, or wasn't at that time. A little bit slower, made him the perfect foil for Lando Norris. But he wasn't bad, quite capable of winning Grand Prix in a good car, for sure. And would have been a much better teammate for Lando in terms of the balance of the team, in terms of the two sides of the garage and how they work together. That's what I'm talking about. that everybody has their own opinion. Everybody wants close racing, and no one will decry that. But for a team to sacrifice its own performance because the fans out there want to see the two best possible drivers racing one another is a bit ridiculous, isn't it? Why would any team do that? They don't do it. They do it because they think it's better for the race team and better for them as a company. And I've been saying all along, I don't think it was. And I think it was the wrong choice of driver. And I've been saying that from day one. And I'm happy to keep saying it. As much as I respect Oscar Piastri's talent and his ability, I don't think McLaren needed him at that time. And I think Daniel would have been a perfect combination for 2025.
Go on then, Mr. Windsor. Zak Brown in recent weeks came out and said that he's well aware of 2007 when Alonso and Lewis took bites out of each other's points haul sufficient to allow Kimi Raikkonen to come in the back door late and win himself the Drivers' Championship in 2007. Zak Brown said of that circumstance that if picking favourites meant avoiding that, then he'd happily lose the Drivers' Championship. Have you ever heard a team principal speak like that, Peter?
I don't think I have. No, I'm not sure. I'm not sure that's the right conclusion to be drawing from that, though. I think the point is, why would you do that? Why would you put yourself in a position where you've got to pick and choose? Why not have a balanced team, as Michael Schumacher kind of prescribed, and before him, Jackie Stewart prescribed, and we've seen it, forevermore. And Nigel Mansell, the only reason he went back to Williams was because Riccardo Patrese was in the undercar. He wouldn't have gone back if Alan Prost had been there. But nobody stands back now and says, oh, he was afraid of Alan Prost. It was just that they realized that the way to get the best from any driver, any really great driver, is to not hustle him in the garage with the other car.
Yeah.
And so, of course, Zak Brown would say that because he made the decision to get Oscar Piastri. So what else is he going to say? He's not going to say, oh, I made a mistake, is he?
No.
Does Zach ever say that? So, of course he's going to say that, but I don't think it means very much, really, to be honest, because who cares what he thinks? The reality is it's done now. And of course, they're going to have to live with whatever happens. I'm sure Zach, deep inside, would like Lando to be the champion, I guess, because he's known him for so long. Equally, he would love the concept of either of his two drivers, of Oscar winning the Drivers' Championship. And I think he would be quite comfortable, probably, if neither of them did, because they won the Constructors' Championship. I think he's that sort of guy. I think he would be able to say, well, it was great racing. We took it there. Max was good. Move on, 20. Whatever he will say, he will say. I don't think he'll lose a lot of sleep if they don't win the Drivers' Championship.
That's insane, Peter. Absolutely insane. Let's double click on the race circumstance then, because a lot's been made about them not pitting on lap 7 when there was a safety car. Bearing in mind there was always going to be, at the very least, 2 mandatory pit stops. Why do you think? Can I just
stop you there,
of course,
Cameron? I'm interested in your use of the noun pit as a verb, because and this is not you. I know you did because you just used it because a lot of people do. But does not everybody remember that Dennis Jenkinson once wrote a complete column about how the noun pit should not be used as a verb? And there's no such, you cannot say he pitted or or use it as a verb or even a past participle. Has everybody not read that Dennis Jenkinson column in Motorsport?
You're breaking news, Peter. I didn't realize.
I thought I'd bring a bit of levity into the conversation. No, but it's true. Just as Colin Chapman put out a press statement once saying the plural of lotus is lotus, so Dennis Jenkinson said journalists should not be allowed to use the noun pit as a verb.
That's interesting.
And everybody obeyed him. We all obeyed him. And if you look at any journalist of any ilk, they will never of any age from that period, they will not use pit as a verb.
This is breaking news, Peter. I stand.
Okay. Well, anyway, please carry on.
I stand corrected as always. Go on then, Peter. Let's talk about the pit stops.
Yes.
Why do you think McLaren made the decision that they did? Lap 7, it seemed like it was obvious that you've got to get at the very least 2 pit stops out the way. You have to. It's mandated now. Do you think that they didn't do it for fear that they would have to double stack and then infringe upon the progress of one of their drivers, Oscar or Lando? Did they make that decision at the altar of a perceived egalitarianism?
Well, I don't think it was the double stacking thing because Max was between them. So it wasn't as if, Lando was sitting on his tail, and it was, the amount of time he would have lost was so small compared with the time that they did lose by staying out, that I don't think that was a factor. I mean, as I said in the video last night, it was quite interesting when Oscar said, "So what's the plan? Are we boxing?" He said, actually, I think Jenks would probably approve of boxing on the basis that it's also a sport. Yeah. Are we boxing or not? And there was sort of silence, an uncomfortable silence for about four corners just before turn 17. They said, "No, stay out, stay out." And Oscar went very quiet then. So they did think about it, which is interesting because the evidence is that they didn't even think about it. Now, I don't think you should read too much into it. I think it was just complete and utter rabbits in the headlight and not knowing what to do. And I mean, I can't imagine that the 25 lap thing was even in their minds because, as you say, it was obviously a two-stop race without the pit stop and without the safety car. But at the same time, a free pit stop's a free pit stop. It's a Christmas present. That's much more important than worrying about what the others are going to do and how much flexibility or you may or may not have at the back end of the race. A free pit stop, a Christmas present. Take it. Thank you very much. That was the point. And they didn't, for whatever reason. And when Lando started talking about it, as he correctly should have, I mean, he made the point that, okay, they made the call with Oscar to stay out, but wouldn't the right thing then for him, Lando, be to come in, split strategies, and at least see where it's going? That would have been the logical thing. He called him the car in front. Well, I think he was referring to Oscar. He may have been referring to Max. I don't know. And I think he was right. I think he was right to have that thinking, but they didn't do it. They didn't even think about splitting strategy. And I think that's all because of they've got these two guys and they don't want to have any discussion after the race about, well, why was he on this strategy? Why wasn't? They've got to keep everything as fair and equal as they possibly can. And I think it's just crossed them up totally. And it was rabbit in the headlights. There was no logic to trying to understand what they did. And I think for Will Joseph to say, the others have lost their flexibility for late in the race. I mean, what else he's probably thinking, what is going on here? What can I say to Lando that might just give him some peace of mind?
Yeah. Max has said before the race that he thinks the only reason why the championship's still alive for him isn't because of anything he's done, not his brilliance or Red Bull's strategic nous, but because of things that McLaren haven't done, because of the extent to which they've been dropping the ball and the frequency of it. Is this not a case in point on that, Peter, that Qatar is yet another example?
I mean, really, they should have clinched the championship in Vegas, really. And I'm not saying as it is now, but in terms of the year and the car they had, Lando or Oscar should have been world champion by Vegas. And they managed to get themselves disqualified with both cars there. And now they haven't done it in Qatar either, against all odds. I mean, they had a really good car in Qatar, as we know, the best. And I could not imagine when I woke up on Sunday morning how Oscar was not going to win that Grand Prix and Lando was not going to be second. It was just a complete and utter given. And I was ready for a totally boring race. And it wasn't, because something as innocuous as a safety car on lap 7 managed to blindside them. And I still can't get my head around it, to be honest, that they did that. I think, any fan in the grandstand, any fan watching it on TV would have said immediately, bring him in. I mean, it's not a clever call. And Red Bull had Hannah up there on the podium, which is a good thing, nice to see her up there. But the reality was, I think that was just Red Bull having her up there saying, yeah, we made the right call. It wasn't a clever call. It was just that, remember what you guys did. You messed it up big time. I think that's what her position was there, because the call was just a completely normal standard call that everybody else made in the pit lane. No big deal. But McLaren couldn't even do that. And I say it's all due to having to run two cars the way they do and the pressure they're under from one side of the garage and the other now, as predicted. And, Daniel was more mature. He was not much slower than Oscar, and he would never have beaten Lando over a championship. And he would have been quite happy to have raced that way. I'm convinced of it. And I think it was a great team. It was a great team in the way that, whatever, Lewis and Valtteri were a great team, or Michael and Rubens were a great team, or Michael and Felipe. It was a great team. And they just blew it apart for no reason with this great car on the horizon. And I just still don't get it. And they're paying the price for that now, for sure.
Talk to me, Peter, about Lando, because in your review video, you talked about Lando's communication with his race engineer, where he was asking for help, turn 10, what am I doing? And got some counsel, to which he responded, well, I'm going to need more help than that, because I can't do what you're asking me. Peter, what do you make of a potential champion F1 driver having those sort of conversations in real time with a race engineer?
Not good. Not good. Can you imagine Jackie Stewart, if they had radios in Tyrrell, saying to Derek Gardner, Derek, I got understeer going into Druids. What do you think I should do? It would never happen, would it? And, you're the racing driver, Jackie, you tell me. And they did that. And it was lovely to hear GP on the radio at one point saying, it was to Max, it was something like, you're going to have understeer turn 9, but a bit of oversteer. Anyway, I'll leave that to you, Max. You'll know how to handle that sort of thing, And I just thought, yes, that's exactly the right tone. And but this other thing, I mean, they were frenetic, both sides, both Lando and Will, and it sounded like, well, I mean, if you want a graphic illustration of the difference between Lando Norris and Max Verstappen, it is exactly that. I think Lando is so driven now by cross-referencing his telemetry with Oscar's and vice versa. Oscar obviously with Lando, which is why I think he's got very lost over the past 3 or 4 months. And the engineers constantly throwing stuff at Lando about how much he should be off the throttle, off the brakes or not. And it's not time management stuff. It's all to do with how to be quick. Whereas in Max's case, 99% of the instructions are all to do with where he can save the tires or save the fuel. But in Lando's case, it's not. And that is the difference. A lot of the natural feel has gone out of Lando's driving because of that, as it has out of Oscar's driving, I think. And I thought it was interesting after the race that Oscar said something like, I hope to drive, and I'm going to drive like this in Abu Dhabi, as if he's actually discovered something in his driving now that he wishes he had before, and which he's going to take onto Abu Dhabi, some spark. I mean, I'm interested to know what he's thinking in his mind like that, because he's been driving flat out as quickly as he can go the last 4 or 5 races and hasn't been going anywhere. So something obviously changed a little bit in the way he's been using the car. I couldn't see it, to be honest, in terms of the way he drives. I mean, Lando, to me, looked like he was pitching the car more than normal in Qatar. And it looked like he was, just overdriving everywhere. And you saw it with some of the mistakes he was making. And that's a function of not really feeling the surface of the road and relaxing and being calm with supple muscles. It's all tension. And I think that was exacerbated by a lot of what was going on in the pit wall.
Yeah. And then you get Quali speaking to the Lando. I mean, Lando's been brilliant over the last 2 or 3 Grand Prix. He's kind of bloomed, not necessarily a caterpillar to a butterfly, not yet, but nearly. Felt like he was getting there. He was more poised in terms of his starts and race restarts. He was getting those right as well. But then all of a sudden, Peter, it's like, where has that gone? The race starts have become dire, and then you see in qualifying, he's having this. He's complaining about a lack of free air, and Paul Joseph comes over the radio and is like, "Well, Lando, what, you gave the place back to Alex Albon? What are you doing? Is this a case, Peter, of Lando crumbling before the pressure, the weight of potentially winning his first driver championship?"
Well, I thought more telling was the mistake he actually made on that last Q3 run, which was a slow corner, the left hand of the turn 2. And I mean, if you're going to make a mistake on your last Q3 lap, it should be sort of using a little bit too much road coming out of 15 or 16 or something quite dramatic, not boring old turn 2, which he did. And that's not good, is it? It's kind of difficult because Lando, for me, still has a lot of touch and feel and softness about his driving, but it wasn't there in Qatar. but it was in Vegas, actually, funnily enough. And I thought he drove pretty well in Vegas. And he has been driving beautifully. Brazil, Mexico, very good examples. But I can't put my finger on what the problem is, to be honest. I really can't. I can only say, I guess the difference in Qatar was that suddenly Oscar was right up to speed again. And Lando knew that he was going to have to put it on the line for that last lap. I mean, there was another telling comment, wasn't there, from Lando? Was it the end of, was it Q1 maybe? Or was it the end of FP3? I can't remember. But he said something like, yeah, don't worry, I'll get it together. Something like that, stop too much chat. I know what I'm going to be doing. And you got that feeling, oh, okay, right, he's going to be on the pole here. And whether he was just talking to himself or not, I don't know. But I don't know. It's all very confusing, isn't it, Cameron? I find it, and I think it's all a function of this total mess of two very fast racing drivers. I wouldn't say great, but very fast racing drivers spreading their stuff in the garage, and a lot of it's getting intermingled inevitably, and it's not bringing the best out in either of them.
No.
I think that's the problem. And, you've seen that in the inconsistency with Piastri, and now you're seeing it with Lando kind of questioning this or that and not being able to get the best from the car when the variables start to play. Nothing unusual there, because he's not a short corner driver like Max, who creates these beautiful sweet spots into a corner, or indeed Charles Leclerc. But he's done a better job of handling the variables in recent history than he did in Qatar, that's for sure.
Yeah. Maybe we chalk some of that up, Peter, to Oscar just being a demon around Qatar. I mean, he always goes well.
I think it was the raising of Oscar's level that definitely put Lando under some pressure. And you've got to assume that Oscar will be right there doing that in Abu Dhabi, right?
Maybe not as good as he was. I mean, Qatar is an Oscar Piastri track, isn't it? He's always done well. Second and third in F1 before this weekend, and then he's always gone well around there in feeder formula. I think he podiums.
Okay, let's talk about, let's classify it as high speed corner commitment then. What have we got in Abu Dhabi? Turn 2, 3, 4 is high speed. It's not, I think it's probably flat now, isn't it? I think it's flat, but you've still got to, get the best from the car through there. So Oscar will be quite good through there. Lando will probably have him then breaking down into that twiddly bit down to the hairpin, the straight, and then there's a chicane. But then there's some quite good corners where Oscar will be quite good, I think. Those sweepers before the last tight corners, Oscar will be quite good there, I would imagine. They're not slow, that's for sure. So I'm not sure you can write Oscar off for Abu Dhabi, actually. I think he'll be, because he will have nothing to lose. He'll be very confident now, given his own pace in Qatar. And it's a big question. What, the Zach master plan, which we keep talking about, joking about, what will he do? If actually Oscar's quick enough to be able to, say, run near Max. Say Max is leading, Oscar's second, say, and whatever happens, Lando makes a bad start, but he's running fifth or something, and there's 5 laps to go, and Max is about to win the World Championship. Would Zach's master plan come into play, which is, Oscar, would you please drop back to 6th place and give P4 to Lando?
Insane. He shouldn't bank on it, Peter. Not anymore.
Well, I don't think. I mean, I know what Oscar will do. Just say, yeah, sorry, radio problem here. Because of course the race is never over, and Oscar could still win the race. So that's the situation McLaren could find themselves in for sure.
Zach Brown definitely shouldn't bake that into any contingency plans, not given the mood of Oscar Piastri. And I
think he's probably given up with any contingency plans or any strategy thoughts, or whatever, get on with it. Safety car, no safety car.
Let's throw. That's
what happens when you got such a good race car. You see, you get a bit complacent and you don't pay attention to all the details. You don't dot all the I's and cross all the T's. And I thought it was quite interesting that Stella's post-race comment was, we made a mistake at the safety car thing, which is a bit like saying, we had a problem with the wheel gun or the jack wouldn't work, mistake. I mean, is that what he calls it? Catastrophic disaster, I think would be more appropriate. But I thought that was interesting insight into the way his brain works.
Mr. Windsor,
and if it was a mistake, what are they going to do? Normally the mistakes, you fix them, don't you? You make sure they don't happen again. What was that mistake? Because first of all, we had the mistake in Vegas where the technical department managed to get both cars disqualified, and now we've got the strategy department managing to lose the Grand Prix comprehensively. So
You
what
know,
happens now?
um, it's a really good point, Peter. I think it's concerning. I've always seen Andrea Stella as more of a, according to his own words, he's always been more of a process guy than outcomes. He's always been driven not to find the silver bullet as far as upgrades that will give the car the pace, but institute for the infrastructure and working culture, the circumstances out of which pace will grow organically. His words, not mine. And so with that front and centre of mind, it's more concerning then that they keep making these very low level, noddy strategic decisions that find themselves in trouble, because that's exactly what Andrea Stella is all about not doing. So I can't reconcile it, Peter. I don't think in Andrea. I think something's going on.
Well, it all smells to me like there are too many committees there, and too many divisions, and too many departments running the Formula One team now. And it should be left to the racing drivers and the team manager. Let's bring back the title team manager. Get rid of all this team principal stuff. It's much too pompous. Team manager is a much better word. And the team manager should be a racer, like a Jonathan Wheatley. Can you imagine Jonathan Wheatley running McLaren and not bringing those two cars in? I mean, it's just, even Christian Horner, I think, would have said, yeah, no brainer here. And indeed, if you'd left it to the two drivers, to Oscar and Lando, if you'd said to them on the lap in which Gasly and Nico had their shunt, felt sorry for Nico there, actually. If you said to them, right, up to you, safety car's going to come out, what do you guys want to do? Do whatever you want. We're ready for you if you want to come in. You think Oscar wouldn't have come in at that point?
100%.
Of course he would have.
Yeah.
This is another thing. There's too much bureaucracy now. And, no, stay out. He's got no time to argue with it because he's already at the start-finish line.
Insane. Paralysis by analysis, Mr. Windsor.
Yeah.
He's hoping they don't blow the championship. But from Max Verstappen's POV, he'd been beating this drum all weekend, saying that McLaren, the only reason why the championship's still alive for him is because not because of Red Bull's exploits or his genius laps around Silverstone in Quali or Saudi Arabia similar, Suzuka, not because of those, but because of McLaren's ineptitudes, is because they keep dropping the ball. Is this... do you think this Grand Prix is proof positive of that? That it's not.
Well, it is,
McLaren's...
but I think Max is being a bit unfair to Red Bull there because they've done an amazing job with that floor upgrade they had, and Monza, and they've done their car is definitely a much better car, and the turnaround they had and produced for Qatar was amazing. From bouncing to a pretty good race car capable of winning a Grand Prix, providing McLaren mess it up, is a huge jump. And I think all credit to Red Bull for that in this post-Adrian Newey era. I mean, a lot of people said it's the end of Red Bull. How many people were saying, oh, it's the end of Red Bull, Adrian's leaving, Christian's leaving, it's all over.
Everyone.
And look at them, still arguably the best team, TEAM, as distinct from company or whatever manufacturer in Formula One. As a race team, they're still brilliant. And I think, Red Bull have had their fair share of poor calls as well. And Spain sticks out a mile. If they hadn't put him on the wrong tyres at the restart there, he could well have been on the podium. And being on the wrong tyre put Max in a position where he made a million mistakes and did some stupid things and got penalties and all the rest of it. But the problem was the decision at the restart on tyres. That was a very poor strategy decision. And in my view, they should never have started them on softs in Singapore either. But anyway, putting that to one side, I think a lot of credit should go to Max, obviously, as a racing driver for where he is now. And it's just typical of Max that he's not spending any time talking about himself or really the team, but he's using any time he's got to sort of needle his opposition, which is what all good racing drivers should be doing. They shouldn't be talking about themselves. And he's absolutely right to phrase it the way he did. But I think in reality, of course, Red Bull and Max have done an outstanding job over the last 6 months.
Max went a step further pre-race and said the bookend to his soliloquy on McLaren and the state of the championship was that had he been in an MCL 3.9, that the championship would have been finished a long time ago, quote. What do you think of that, Peter?
I think he's absolutely right. Absolutely right. And I think anybody in Formula One would know that. It's a very, very good car, that MCL 39. And if Max was in that car, of course, he would have won the world championship. I don't know what, Austin probably. So, yeah, I totally agree with that. And one of the reasons McLaren haven't is because of this, dichotomy they got between the two drivers, and because neither of them are as good as Max Verstappen anyway. So, end of story there. And yeah, he's right. McLaren have tripped themselves up, but the real problem is, as I keep saying, is having to run two very, very quick racing drivers. And you could turn that back the other way and say, well, if Charles Leclerc had been at Red Bull all year, would Max be where he is on points right now? I don't think he would. That's the way you would throw the ball back to Max then, and a good interviewer would have done that.
Oh, that's a really good question there. You've thrown me massively, Peter. Go on then, let's talk double click on Max Verstappen's performance at the Qatar Grand Prix. You spoke in your review video that his gift was in his ability to get and keep the tyres in good nick, that he was very progressive in his stints. Is that, again, his durable competitive advantage as versus the other 19, potentially?
Oh, absolutely. He can get a faster lap out of a car when he's managing the tyres than, I would say, every other driver on the grid.
Wow.
So it's not just a question of he's very good at managing the tyres and making sure they don't get too hot here and looking after the left front or the right front or making sure there's no graining. It's how quickly he can go while he's doing all that. That is the point. And it's all to do with the sweet spot he creates with his own style of driving, which I, for want of a better little phrase, I call short corners. And short corners is one of the things he can do really well if the corner lends itself to it. But the bottom line is he can basically use any racing line within reason and still more or less do the same lap time. And he can back off here and make up for it there. And that is the beauty of the art. But that is Jim Clark winning the first big international second big international I ever saw in my life, 65 Warwick Farm International 100. He lost third gear on lap 2. He didn't have the use of third gear for the rest of the race, only a 5-speed gearbox. And Warwick Farm was pretty twisty with a lot of torque areas where you needed third gear. Took him about 10 laps to be able to reproduce the lap times he'd been doing, admittedly with a heavy fuel load, at the start of the race, when he did have third. And then he drove the rest of the race with no third and won. Took the lead with 5, 10, 15 laps to go. And that's what Max Verstappen can do. He can make up for a deficiency, i.e. tyre management, backing off on the straight here, doing whatever he's doing, and still produce a lap time that will enable him to be competitive once they're reducing the management. Lap by lap is what they do in a very systematic way at Red Bull. And it's just beautiful to watch. And it sounds very digital. Okay, Max, you can reduce the management now. You can reduce it at 17 or turn 15, whatever it is. Okay, 9, you can take it off at 9. And it sounds like, oh, yeah, he's doing this, he's pressing this button, doing that button. But what actually is going on in the cockpit is unbelievable finesse and touch, and tiny, tiny subtle adjustments to the steering, the throttle and the brakes at any moment, at any dynamic weight that is moving around the car. And Max doing it in such a way, it is invisible from the outside, but he's doing it in such a way that it's totally deceptive. And you think, oh, this is on rails. He's just got this. He's just pressed a button. But it's not. It's unbelievable artistry that's going on there. And that's what, sadly, that's what Oscar and Lando don't have. Charles doesn't have it to that extent, but he's not that far away. But he does make more mistakes when he's doing that than Max. And, in the future, I would think Hajar's not going to be too far away from that. And there are a couple of others as well. I don't think George is in that area. And so that's how good Max is. And we're seeing that in this year of tyre management, in these last few races particularly, we're seeing this new skill of Max absolutely on display in terms of results. We're not seeing it in terms of what he's actually doing to create that, but we're seeing it in terms of results, and it's just so impressive to watch.
He's not bad, that Max fella. It'll go well, Peter. Do you know what I mean? He'll win himself a couple of championships. I've wanted to ask you this question for a while now, Peter, since you compare Jim to Max Verstappen. For one lap to save all of humanity, who have you got? Jim or Max?
In what car? Are we in a Lotus 32B with no third gear around Warwick Farm with tiny low guardrails, quite a lot of gum trees, a few koalas up the leaves there, and a lake, unexposed lake, or are we in a
Oof.
very high tech Red Bull RB21 with lots of runoff area and curbs that are not too difficult?
Let's do
What situation are we in? I think that's an important question.
let's do 2 laps then. What, one in each, just for parity.
And what tires are they on?
Oh, I mean,
And how much testing do they each get in each car?
yeah. Fair cough. Fair cough.
No, I mean the point is you can't compare it. I mean, and Max has never had to deal with his left foot other than braking. He's never had to use a clutch with his left foot, and he's never had to change gear with his right hand down below in the cockpit somewhere. Equally, Jim he'd be absolutely astonished, and he would love, I'm sure, all the electronic gizmos on the car and the things you could do with the steering wheel. My gut feeling is that Jim would probably adapt sooner to Max's world than Max would to Jim's world. But that's not a slight on Max. It's just that Jim's world also involves incredible danger and rattling around in the cockpit with an open face helmet and no seatbelts. And I think that would be quite a big culture shock for Max.
Yeah, good shouts. Go on then, Mr. Windsor. It sounds like, since we're talking about Red Bull, news will be broken tomorrow officially that Isaac Hadjar will take the seat alongside Max at Oracle Red Bull Racing for 2026. From Isaac Hadjar's POV, do you think that's a good shout, or is it?
Oh yeah, brilliant. I mean, he's a learner. He's quite emotional, and probably alongside Max, he'll start to learn to curb his emotions and to become more stable as a personality, which will definitely improve him, I think, as a driver. But he's got a very good head on his shoulders. He learns a lot very quickly, and he'll learn a massive amount from Max. It won't be Max sitting him down and saying, "Oh, do this, do that." It'll be just watching the way Max does it, the way Max thinks about it, what he wants from the car, because Isaac is basically a short corner driver, like in the genre of Max Verstappen, and he has that ability to grow into being somewhere near Max, I think. And maybe not, I don't know, difficult to say where it's going. But I see it as a bit of a Jackie Stewart, Francois Sever thing, where Sever was very, very good when he joined Tyrrell, much better than people thought. And he became an extremely good Grand Prix driver under Jackie's wing. And I think it'll be the same with Hadjar. A great move for him, and congratulations to him. He deserves it. And I think Red Bull as well. I'd love to, I think it's important, as I was touching earlier, to say how well Red Bull are doing now without Adrian. And it's a huge story. It's a huge thing when you lose Adrian Newey, the best guy in Formula One, and you've lost him. And yet the team is looking pretty sharp, isn't it? Very sharp. And I was thinking, it's easy to say, oh, next year they're going to be in trouble, the Ford engine, this or that. But if you're Max Verstappen and you've just won a Grand Prix like Qatar, or Vegas for that matter, wouldn't you be feeling, I really love these guys. Such a great team. Whatever situation we're going to get into, we'll get out of it. These guys know what they're doing. Wouldn't you be thinking that? I think you would.
There is currency in momentum.
Well, yeah, and it's very different from the atmosphere one imagines at Maranello at the moment.
Oh, Pete, speaking of which, is it time for Lewis Hamilton to hang it up? There's a phrase often trotted out about high-level sports stars and when to call it a day, that most don't retire from the sport they love. They allow it to retire them. Is Lewis Hamilton now, at the ripe old age of nearly 41, at risk of something similar, Pete?
Well, if he retires and Fernando Alonso wins the World Championship next year in an Adrian Newey car, age what, 44?
Yeah.
How's Lewis going to feel? Not very good, I think. So I don't think the age is a factor, as I've said all along. We're assuming Lewis went to Ferrari for 3 reasons. 1, because he was bored and annoyed by everything that was going on at Mercedes. 2, he loved the feel of going to Ferrari as a racing kid. You always want to drive for Ferrari, and that's fair enough. And 3, a lot of money. Now, the Mercedes things worked out okay. I'm sure he's glad he's not there anymore. I think the money thing has probably worked out okay, and assuming they haven't paid him in cryptocurrency or something horrendous. Um, but the third one, the Ferrari thing, he's got it completely wrong because he went there. I think it was just a given that he would be right there with Charles, and sometimes Charles might be a little bit ahead, but he'd be racing Charles. And if the car's capable of winning, he'll have his fair share of race wins. And that's, don't even think about that. And you enjoy the pasta and everything. But of course, the whole problem is, as predicted, that Charles was always going to blow him away because he got blown away by George at Mercedes. So there was no way he was going to go into Ferrari and beat Charles, who's even better than George. And so it's proved. And because Lewis never anticipated that, he had no ammunition with which to cope. He couldn't retaliate in any way. He didn't know what to do. It never happened to him before. And that's where we find him. And I think the only way he can continue now is if he forgets about all that Charles business and just tries to enjoy his life at Ferrari and hope that they have a really good, easy car to drive next year, and he'll be fine. Because I think it's too late now for Lewis to become a driver capable of beating Charles Leclerc. He could have done it if he'd worked hard at it over the winter last year, in the anticipation that it was going to be difficult to beat Charles. But quite clearly, the thought never occurred to him, and therefore he didn't do any work over the winter as a driver. He did a lot of other work, presumably, or whatever he did over the winter, I don't know. But it's too late now, I think. He's too ingrained in what he does quite badly ever to make any changes now. So the only way he can continue would be if he just floats through it all and enjoys it all and he's relaxed. And he's not, is he? I mean, he's got that terrible, supercilious, cynical thing now where you try and talk to him and he tries to, he thinks it's quite clever not to give any decent answers because John Elkann has suddenly said the drivers talk too much. I mean, that's just juvenile, in my opinion. And he should never have, he should never have allowed John Elkann to say that because I think John was the guy that got him in the first place. So they're obviously pretty close. But beyond that, he should be saying, well, John Elkann has said that, but the reality is I do want to talk about the car and we're not going to make progress unless people understand what the problems are. And just talk to people like adults and everything will be fine. But all this sort of hiding away with a smirk saying, oh, you know, the weather's going to be good or something, it doesn't achieve anything, I don't think.
It's not very edifying. But if I play defense on Sir Lewis, I can't. I don't want to overlay on Sir Lewis Hamilton a Peter Windsor level of eloquence in the first instance. I think that would be. I think I'd be doing Lewis Hamilton a disservice to expect that of him. But I don't know else. I don't know what else he can do. I don't know what else I expect Lewis Hamilton to do, Peter. I mean, he's desperately trying to change the working culture.
Just be a human being. He's a 7 times world champion with $1 trillion in the bank account. He's got the greatest life on the planet. He's driving a beautiful Ferrari racing car. Relax. And the more he relaxes and enjoys his life, I guarantee the better he will drive. And just he's done all that stuff. He's done all the brand stuff. He's done all the money stuff. Just become a racing driver again. Use this time, this last period in his life as a racing driver at Ferrari to become the kid who was so good at Rye House and Butmore Park and go out and be that driver. Have the same helmet color. Rediscover yourself and become that driver. Don't be the brand ambassador for Lewis Hamilton. Don't be the brand ambassador for Ferrari. Just be this racing driver. That's what the best advice I could give him. And it's quite simple, really. But I don't think he's going to do that, sadly. I think he's just too big a phenomenon in his own mind now, probably.
Peter, I'm not even sure. I think we might be asking Lewis to do impossible things here. Can you unwind that back? Can you overtype all of the trauma on the back of 2021 and getting beat by George when you didn't expect it, asking Toto to keep Valtteri Bottas and he says no, we're going to usher in the new era with George, and now as of the time of writing, 78 points, more than 3 race wins between him and Charles. I don't think you go through those and can even be the same person. I think Rye House Sir Lewis is gone, never to be seen again. Peter, I think I as a Sir Lewis Hamilton fan am expecting him to do impossible things. I don't think 2018 Singapore Sir Lewis, I'm not sure we'll ever see that chap again, Peter, sadly.
No, I think there's a cataclysmic change after Abu Dhabi 21. And I did say that at the time. I thought, I I think I did one live stream and said I wouldn't be surprised if he retires now because too many things have happened here. This is too big a shock to lose the championship the way he did, and then to have Mercedes say you can't have Valtteri Bottas, you've got to have George Russell, and then to give him a ridiculously bad car. So there was a triple whammy there, and it was almost impossible to recover. But my point is, he got to the end of that, and he did go through the next 2 or 3 years, and then he did get the big offer from Ferrari, and that was the moment to rediscover himself, to get rid of all that stuff, and then to become Rye House, Buckmore Park again, and to be Lewis Hamilton. Yes, with the massive retainer. Yes, with the red Ferrari and the beautiful badge and the pasta and the country and the road cars. But ultimately, the pure Lewis Hamilton racer who we know and love. But he didn't do that. Because that Lewis Hamilton would have looked very carefully at Charles Leclerc and said, right, how am I going to beat this guy? But he didn't do that quite clearly because he didn't work on a lot of the driving flaws that had built up in his repertoire in those last 2 years at Mercedes. And that's the problem. Last 3 years, actually. 2 and 3 and 4, yeah. Last 3 years. And that's the problem. He didn't work hard enough over the winter on his driving. And as you say, is it too late now? I think it probably is. The only way I think he can go forward now, if he doesn't want to retire, is to just be relaxed, enjoy life, enjoy being a racing driver, preferably get a nice little apartment in Maranello and hang out with the guys in this 1 year of his life, give it the best shot he's got, be there every day, go and have lunch at the Cavallino with whoever, and just be relaxed with everybody.
Yeah.
And let the cards fall where they may. He's obviously not going to do much work on his driving as such, and not much is going to change at Ferrari in terms of strategy calls or management because, they've missed the boat on all that. It's interesting just reflecting on the Adrian Newey team principal thing, which, as I said, I think he's been a team principal for a long time, except in name, and good on Aston Martin for realizing that finally and doing that. And they'll get the best from Adrian now. But they're going to have to take a lot of stuff from Adrian, including Lawrence Stroll. That's, that'll be an interesting battle. But it does kind of explain why Ferrari didn't hire Adrian Newey in the end, because I guess they sensed that that's what would have happened, and Freddie might have lost his job and Adrian would have taken over the whole thing. Now, if I was John Alcon, I would have said, well, yeah, okay, good, do it, if that's what it takes. But I guess too many people realized that if Adrian came, they might lose their jobs or things would be difficult for them. And so therefore, the whole thing was knocked on the head. I think that's a mistake. But then, that's just me. I think the money that Lewis made Ferrari in terms of the stock price going up versus the money they're paying him, I think a lot more money would have been made by Ferrari had they hired Adrian Newey and kept Carlos Sainz. Even if running Adrian had its own costs built in, 2 years down the road, that company would have been worth a lot more than it is worth now. Because of the success, Ferrari win another world championship. What would that do for their success? That's much more important than a short-term stock price elevation due to hiring Lewis Hamilton, in my opinion. And having a great racing car is what it's all about. And Adrian would have given them that, but they said no. And so that was that. Then he went to Aston Martin. Great shame for Ferrari, but that's where it is. You've got to make the most of it now.
A great shame for all parties. I don't want to leverage my Monday morning quarterback privilege, but and I was one of those who said that Lewis should go to Ferrari and tick off one of his bucket list items, but it doesn't look like a good move now. I think.
Well, you say that, Cameron, but in your defence, where else could he have gone anyway?
True.
If you think about it, I mean, he could have stayed at Merck, I suppose, but he would have
option.
He would have had a miserable time with George. And he might have won another race or two. I don't know. Maybe not. I doubt it, actually. And where else? Who else would have had him if not Ferrari?
I think he should have stayed at Mercedes and hoped that they would have thrown an additional year at him for 2026 and then see where we go. I think if he harboured any aspirations to become Rye House Lewis Hamilton, that the highest probability of him doing that rested with the boys and girls from Brackley and Brixworth, not Fiorano and Maranello.
Except that Freddie Vasseur was there, and he's part of Lewis's fabric from those days. Admittedly, not Rye House, but he's certainly Norris Ring and Osterreich Ring and Hockenheim and a couple of British circuits, Formula 3, and he knows Lewis well, and obviously GP2, GP3 with ART. So it wasn't as if Lewis was going there without any of that history and tapestry. It was there. And I think Freddie being there was one of the reasons Lewis probably did go there. But for me, Freddie Vasseur has been a disappointment in that area. He's not got the best from Lewis Hamilton.
Yeah.
Now, whether he's got constraints within which he has to work, which are making it impossible, or whether he just doesn't know, I don't know. I don't know him well enough to say that. But I suspect it's the latter. I suspect he just doesn't know what to do to get the best from Lewis. Even though he's in a better position than anybody on the planet, probably, to sit him down and get him thinking in the right way.
I think we're speaking to impossible things, Peter. As you ran third, I think it's very apropos that I ask you about, since we just spoke about Lewis Hamilton and his ineptitude in 2025. I've got a friend, Mr. Windsor, who said that it was ill-advised of Scuderia Ferrari to let go of Carlos Sainz Jr., that if it's not broke as far as driver pairings, then you shouldn't fix it. It's not lost on me, Peter, that Carlos Sainz, 2 podiums at a Williams this season for Carlos Sainz Jr., Mr. Smooth Operator, whereas Lewis Hamilton, 0 podiums. Speak to me very briefly as he ran third about Carlos Sainz and his feats this season in that Williams. 2 podiums, Peter.
Yeah. I can't say any more than I've said already. Massive mistake for Ferrari to sack him and replace him, because he was often doing a better job than Charles over a race weekend. He was right there. His driving was getting better all the time. Lovely guy. And Ferrari just got rid of him because they had to have Lewis. And I think that was a massive mistake. I still maintain that Charles, I think long term, it would be better for him to have gone to Sauber than to Williams, because Sauber will very soon become Audi, and that's a great brand for Charles to take, for Carlos to take into the future for his life, his career post Formula One as well. And with Jonathan Wheatley there, they're not a bad team, and they'll get better all the time, I think. And so I think that's the only misgiving I have about that, because I mean, whatever car he was in, he was always going to look pretty good. The one thing that has surprised me, actually, is how much Alex Albon has fallen off under the pressure of Carlos Sainz, and how many mistakes he's making now, and how irrational and emotional he's getting on the radio too, which is very unlike the Alex Albon that we know and love. And he's lost a lot of that very calm, soft approach that he had. And you can see that it's the Carlos Sainz thing getting to him. And so that's a surprise, but all credit to Carlos Sainz for pulling that off, because Alex Albon is not slow, and to beat him the way he has is very impressive. So I'm so pleased for him, for his dad, for the whole family. Wonderful. I just wish he was in a Sauber next year and had a better future, really, in terms of where he was going. But it's also, I don't know. If I was Ferrari, I'd just do the deal and get him back straight away, to be honest. But, I'm not, so I can't.
Peter, there's a reason why they call you Nostradamus. That you're not the first person to have said that. that might be a conversation. It's that you saw the picture of Carlos Sainz Sr. having a chat with Frederick Vasseur. I think that might be an option that we might need revisiting. That might need revisiting even in the next 24 months' time.
Yeah, 24, I think, is a more realistic thing. And of course, in the same way that Ferrari didn't need Lewis Hamilton, they needed Adrian Newey, they needed a better car. In the same way now, they don't actually need Carlos Sainz. They just need a better car and a better engineering structure. So Carlos isn't going to fix things if he goes there. From his point of view, just as it was the same with Lewis's point of view, it would be great to go to Ferrari and from Carlos to go back to Ferrari. But that's actually not what Ferrari want. What they needed was Adrian Newey. They don't have Adrian Newey. Now they've got to make sure they do as good a job without Adrian Newey as Red Bull and McLaren are, and to some extent Mercedes are. And that's not easy because they're not doing it at the moment. So the building blocks on which they can rely over the winter are much smaller and more fragmented than those of McLaren, certainly Red Bull and Mercedes.
You mean to tell me, Peter, that you've got no faith in Loic Serra to do what Adrian Newey could have done?
No. No, I think he'll do. I think he's very talented, but Adrian is more than just an aerodynamicist. He's the complete car, and to some extent, almost the complete engine. plus he's a very good race engineer, plus he's a very good performance engineer, plus he's a very good deal maker, and plus he has a gut feeling for motorsport that goes back to pit lanes in the 1980s. So how can anybody compete with that?
Yeah.
No, there's nobody on the planet Earth as talented as Adrian Newey or as experienced as Adrian Newey in doing a complete car. Yes, there are some very good aerodynamicists out there. Like my well is one of those for sure. Pete Prod obviously is as well. But could Pete Prod do an engine? And can he do a complete car? How is he on heave stiffness? I don't know. Maybe he's okay. But Adrian's great on everything. That's the point about Adrian. And I'm not sure everybody gets that.
Yeah. No, he knows a lot. Maybe designs Fernando a decent car next year, and
well, of course he will, and absolutely for sure it will be a good car. Take my word for it. The big problem next year will be what they'll be doing about Lance Stroll if he doesn't pick up his game and become, he should be a couple of tenths behind Fernando everywhere, and if Fernando's capable of getting on the podium, Stroll should be top 6, and if Fernando's winning, Stroll should be top 3. That's how it should be. We don't expect too much of him, but that's quite a big ask. But if Adrian does produce a really good car and they run it well, which I'm sure they will, and running it well is super important in 2026 in terms of harvesting of the power, all the electronics that are coming into play, plus everything else, the active aero. All of that's really important, but they'll run it well. So, Lance should do okay. But if he doesn't, that's going to be the big diplomatic issue that Adrian has to deal with at Aston Martin. And I wouldn't wish that on anyone really, having to pacify Lawrence Stroll.
Good luck, Adrian. You'll be all right.
In fact, he'll be all right, and he'll do a better job with the car probably than anybody else on the planet. Yeah. Not probably, for sure.
Just quickly on Adrian Newey, I saw them ask him a question on Sky Sports F1 about him taking the team principal role and fielding, doing like Toto and Christian have made industries of doing, which is answering the stupid question of the accredited F1 media. Does Adrian Newey have that in his locker, Peter? Because when he's answering those questions, already it appeared like his patience was wearing thin.
Yeah, I mean, Adrian's concept of being a team principal, I think, is not based on anything that he saw Christian doing or Ron doing or Toto Wolff does. I think it's based on logic, which is I'm the right guy to make the key decisions about the design and overall concept of the car, about liveries, about driver choice, how we work with Pirelli, all the key issues, and let him get on with designing the car. And in terms of getting someone to answer the stupid questions, I'll have somebody who does that. In terms of somebody who deals with the FIA, I'll have somebody who does that. And I know exactly the people I want. And in terms of somebody who has to deal with Honda, I know exactly the guy I want. And he'll be very good at delegating. Racing people are good at delegating because they've been around so long. They know all the good people in the pit lane, and they'll get them, and they'll get them exactly how they want them. And the structure that Adrian creates will be completely different from any other so-called team principal, but it'll be a really good one, and it'll be probably quite spare and not too over the top. And it won't make him look like a king. It'll make him look like an efficient person who's doing the job and running a great race team. That's what Adrian's all about. And you see that in the way he runs his classic cars. It's not a lot of Adrian Newey in there, is it? It's it's a GT40 or it's a Lotus 49, and he's got absolutely the right touch when it comes to understanding motor racing and Formula One in particular. And he's very good with drivers too. Very good with drivers.
But in 2025 going into 26, Peter, is that not not stakeholder management and being almost the shop window for the team? Is that not part of the team principal role? Like, is it not mission critical that Adrian Newey can go out there and shake some hands and euphemistically kiss some babies' heads to be a really good team principal in 2026?
I think that's how Toto and Zach like the role of the team principal to be. It doesn't mean to say the way it has to be. And Adrian Newey's response would be, stakeholders, I'll win some championships for them. That'll keep them quiet. It's just the same as Bernie. When when Bernie sold the rights to Formula One, Formula One to CBC, and before that, somebody else, I can't remember who it was, and he was still employed to run Formula One, they started this whole thing about, we want monthly reports on how the industry's going and updates on where we're going with the championship for the following year, and we want to know about, how the circuits are going we need a 36-hour turnaround on whether we've got profit or loss on any given race and all this sort of stuff. And the first time Bernie's first monthly report was due, everybody was due to meet in Jersey, in a big board meeting in Jersey. And Bernie was supposed to be there and to deliver his monthly report to CBC. And suddenly at the last minute, the phone rings, and Bernie can't make it. Sorry, he's been unavoidably detained in London, but he'll send the report through by fax. And so they all sat around looking at the fax machine, and chugga, chugga, chugga. Eventually the fax came out, and it was on Bernie's notepaper, and it said, "Dear colleagues, there is nothing to report, full stop, Bernie." And it'll be the same with Adrian. In terms of handshaking and going around and looking after the sponsors and the so-called stakeholders at a Grand Prix weekend, yeah, he might do that for 5 minutes, but he'll have a good team of people who will do that for him. And they'll have lots of renter drivers that can go in and, go and talk about the next generation or whatever. He won't waste his time with nonsense like that because he's too busy. He's too busy running the team. And he knows ultimately that regardless of how he runs the team, the only thing that really matters is results. And if he delivers a world championship for Aston Martin sometime in the next 2 years, the stakeholders, believe me, are going to be very, very happy, regardless of how few hands he actually shakes or how many interviews he actually does. I mean, why would you want to interview Adrian anyway? What's he going to say? He's not going to give anything away about the car. And what else are you going to talk about? Harry, maybe, yeah, his son. Yeah, it'd be good to have him in a decent car, wouldn't it? He's quite talented, I think. But what else? Get on with it. Stop annoying Adrian. Don't interview him and let him get on with his job. That would be my opinion.
Maybe. I feel like
not maybe, Cameron. Definitely.
I feel like in 2026 there'll be demands of him. At some point, I think.
No, he will make sure there are not demands. That's the whole point. He will explain to them how they should not have demands. In the same way Bernie said with that one-line fax.
Yeah.
Don't waste my time with all this rubbish. I will deliver. Don't worry. That's the whole point of Bernie's one-liner fax. And it'll be the same with Adrian. In a different way, in a different style. But he will make it clear that there's no point in asking him for things he doesn't want to talk about or pushing him into saying things he doesn't want to say.
Good luck,
and you won't want to walk into boardrooms and deal with stakeholders. He's too busy designing the car. He'll have somebody else to go and do that. Some bloke who's quite good at that. Right.
Good luck, Adrian. We'll be
Lawrence Stroll, maybe. I don't know.
Why
not use him? He's a big superstar.
Yeah, potentially. I'm keen to see how that works, Peter.
Well, get Lance to do some work.
Oh my God, Peter! What are we doing?
There you go.
What are we doing?
Fernando Alonso. Fernando, you want this great race car? You're going to do a bit of work, buddy. You're going to have to go into these board meetings and keep all the stakeholders happy until we win a race or two. Okay, yeah, no problem. I do this.
Mr. Windsor, I think you might have hit gold with that Fernando, because they're teeing him up as an Aston Martin ambassador.
Well, he's such a cool guy, isn't he? Everybody wants to be photographed and shake hands with Fernando Alonso. And yeah, why not use the guy properly? Stop all that other stuff he does, and just get him to focus for a year on keeping the heat away from Adrian Newey. That's Fernando's job now, in my opinion. Let Adrian get on with it and let Fernando take up all the crud that is going to be time wasting for Adrian, and then get in the race car and have fun.
I think
that would be the right way to run it. And probably that's how Adrian will run it, actually.
I think you might have struck gold there, Peter. Again, another Peter D. Windsor, aka Nostradamus pick. When they watch this in 12 to 24 months' time, there'll be another one like Mr. Windsor was barking at the wrong tree. And not bombshell. Peter, you've been a legend, far too generous with your time as always. It's been a privilege. If you enjoy yourself some market-leading purple sector insight from Mr. Windsor, go and subscribe to that YouTube channel. If you're not already, what are you doing with your life? Shortly thereafter, it's the Short Corners, is the pick to click on your favourite podcasting platform. Give that a follow and a 5-star review. If you're watching this on the YouTubes, do me a favour, share, like, comment, subscribe, all of that gubbins. If you're listening to this on a podcasting platform, likewise, 5 stars and a follow. Mr. Windsor, you're a legend as always. Thank you so much for watching. Between now And next time the prosecution rests, there are no further questions, Your Honour.